before he wept, he gave a long, deep, frustrated sigh. Both of these came as a result of his deep love for his friend, something that the crowd actually acknowledges. Weeping is something that many of us understand and experience. When somebody dies unexpectedly, as has happened to me this fall, I weep. When tragedy hits close to me in the life of somebody I care about, I may weep. But I also give out that long, deep, frustrated sigh. Maybe you do as well. It's that sound that people make when they experience that they're not entirely in control of the world, or often even of their own lives. And sometimes the sighing and the weeping come together. Jesus approaches the tomb of his friend Lazarus, and he has this deep, deep love for him. And that deep love that he has for him tears him apart. Even while he's giving thanks to God for restoring his friend to life, Jesus is locked in this human drama: love, frustration, tears. This past week, I spent 4 days on retreat up at St. Dorothy's Rest. After the first 24 hours of just realizing I was not in constant motion, I began to settle down into a question, which is what I do when I go on a retreat, right? I focused on the question about love. More specifically, I focused on the question of God's love and the way that God's love makes life possible. Not just my own life, not just your own lives, but life itself. It's God's love that brings Lazarus out of the tomb. And so while I was thinking about God's love, I was also trying to not think about that more familiar kind of love that I think about all the time, which is conditional love. Because I think God's love is unconditional. And most of the love that I experience in my life is just conditional. And I, like everybody else in the room, I learned, first of all, about love from my family. And my family's love was always conditional. Not because my family was wicked or selfish or judgmental or anything like that, just because everybody's family's love is conditional. And we say, my family loves me unconditionally. Yeah. But what I've learned about love in my family was that there was a tension built into love. I was thinking about it, and I was thinking it was like standing on a balance board on top of a log. On one side is unconditional love, on the other side is conditional love. And if you lean too far on one or the other, it feels like you're going to fall off. So there was a tension about the nature of love. Am I really loved as I am, or will I be loved more if I clean up my room? What I'm learning about God is that God is not like this. Because there are no conditions with God. There is only love. I don't have to balance between unconditional and conditional love from God. I just have to stand still and be loved. But I'm still holding that tension from my first learning about love. So most days, instead of just simply standing in peace, I stand with this tension. Does God really love me unconditionally? Or will God love me more if I clean up my room? The problem is when I start believing that God's love is conditional, it makes me work hard for things that really don't matter. Like trying to be a good boy, trying to get God to like me more. And all that does is really keep me from loving God. I know some people who get hung up on the idea that they're just terrible sinners who God can't love unconditionally. Some people get hung up on the normative meaning of love. All love is normative, but it's also all conditional. So they figure God must be the same way. And I know some people that don't believe in God at all, but who believe in love, and sometimes they believe love is conditional, sometimes it's not conditional. And sometimes people don't bother thinking about it because they're just too busy trying to make it through the day. There are a million ways that people think about God and love, and whether or not love is conditional. But the thing that I'm wondering about today is how the way we think about love changes the way we live. What do we do or not do because we think that there are conditions on God's love? Our lives really are the only way that we're going to know anything. And the way we live our lives shows ourselves and other people what we fundamentally believe. So for today, for All Saints' Day, what I really want more than anything is to have greater trust in God's care for me, God's love for me. And the fact that God's love cannot increase because God already loves me infinitely. And those times where I believe something else, I just screw things up. That's not from God, by the way, that's from me. Because I'm the one that gets hung up on things done and left undone. I'm the one that doesn't let myself off the hook. I'm the one who has to be perfect. And the truth is, nobody really cares if I'm perfect or not, at least the people I would care about. That's all on me. What I need to believe right now is that I am enough and more than enough. And that is my message to you. You, right now, are enough and more than enough. As you are right now, in this moment, you are loved by God as much as you are ever going to be loved. And you cannot add anything to that because you are worthy of love. Maybe that's one of the reasons to pay attention to all the saints. Not because they led perfect lives, because they didn't, but because they pressed all of their hope into God's love. They had a sense that their worth was not based on their perfection, but on their reliance on God's love. And it is God's love that remains with us when they die. At the early service today, we celebrated baptism. And I talked at the service about how sometimes people read baptism, because you can read baptism a lot of different ways. Sometimes people read baptism as a kind of dying, and then a rebirth, a new birth, a new kind of life. And in that way of understanding, it's God who raises us up to a new life in the water of baptism. But sometimes, just like Lazarus in the tomb, you might think those grave clothes are pretty comfy. You might just want to wrap those around us a little bit tighter. Because sometimes being unbound is scary. But the truth is that we're alive. And if we act like we're dead, we're just being fools. Because the tomb has been opened and we have been called out of the tomb. And the only reasonable thing to do is to take off the clothing that stinks like death. So we're like Lazarus. That is, we get to get out of the tomb. We get to be unbound by God's love. guess it just has to be said that, Lazarus didn't have to get out of the tomb. He could have kept the grave clothes really tightly wrapped around himself. And he could have just hung out there. Because God's love will not force us to do anything. And we're going to continue to carry that tension with us. And sometimes that tension will tear us apart. The good news is that you don't have to. Because like Lazarus, you are unbound. You are alive. You are worthy.